title of today's presentation is kind of the misspelled Shakespearean question. It's no longer the question to be or not to be. But in 21st century, we tend to ask the question, to E or not to E, or to E or not to be. And E has becoming a leitmotif, a keyword, a buzzword, a hype that surrounds everything. It's, well, we know the brands which are trying to greenwash themselves to become recognized as environmentally friendly without really doing anything to deserve environmental friendliness. And we know also many organizations, many products, which are trying to pretend innovativeness just by putting an E in front of the earlier brand name without really going through internal structural changes, because E is not just translating the processes of the industrial era into bits and bytes, but it means also the structural and process changes in your organization. I'm so happy I arrived a day earlier here, so I was able to enjoy a great Spanish band, Marlango, playing at Catalan Music Palace, an absolutely magnificent building. Superb concert, part of the Barcelona Guitar Festival. It appears to be a very popular band, which we did not know. Everybody knew every song, a couple of thousand people in the room. And I think me and my wife were the only ones who did not know what song is about to start, because when the drum player started or guitar player started something, then everybody in the audience was having full of ovation, standing up, screaming, shouting. And we said, whoa, probably it will be a good song. And there were one after another just good songs. But in terms of the cultural experience, we did not what to expect, but our experience was great. So if you want to ever hear you too, go to the Dublin concert, because that's the neighborhood. If you want to hear Police, Sting, go to the concert in London. And the experience you get is much stronger because the neighborhood culture is amplifying it a lot. When we talk about the E phenomena, then I always have a question that what it is about. We try to embrace something which is connecting us and enabling us more than any other technology in the mankind history. And there is a great hope embedded to the ICT. It's also in the worldwide agendas in all the nations. All the countries around the world participating in World Summit on Information Society, back to Geneva, Tunis process, declared their goal to build up peaceful and fruitful information societies to enrich the people. They also agreed that they have similar goals about connectivity of society, on delivering the services to people, teaching people how to use ICT, and breaking down barriers. Yet some societies, some organizations are reaching the mutually agreed, the similar goals with much smaller investments per capita faster, and yet inclusively, meaning it's not an elite technology, but broader technology for all society. And we need to understand that the technology is the same around the world. The same keyboard, the same network cables, the Cat5 cable, the TCP/IP protocol, the same wireless key and encryption technologies, they're all the same. We feel like, or our computers feel like at home when they talk to VPA encryption and when they talk TCP/IP. It's the same technology in Barcelona, in Tallinn, in Australia, in any African country. There is no difference. In so often I see that the hope which we have embedded into the ICT has often not realized into the outcomes which were planned. And I honestly think the one reason is the way how we address the solutions and opportunities provided by technology and how the technology is served to us from the marketing perspective. We tend to overestimate the short-term impact of any technological innovation, and we tend to underestimate the long-term impact of the same technologies. When Apple Education Initiative people visited Northern European countries and schools to start up their tablet school environment, I really asked them, what is the difference between you right now and that picture from 1913 when Thomas Edison just lost in 5th District Court in the West Coast, United States, the copyright and patent battle, and the independent movie producers were able to start up and grab the market in the West Coast of United States, setting up their studios, starting producing movies, calling the place Hollywood, the hillside over there. And when Edison said that, well, if something could be used in terms of an invention of mine called cinematography, it could be an education. And his vision was following, saying that by year 1920, we no longer need schools. We no longer need teachers. We need cinemas. We need cinemas where the well-prepared educational content is delivered by cinematography technology to the pupils. And once again, there was no audio at that time in cinema. But his vision and belief about communicating strongly with the moving pictures visually was strong enough to say that by 1920 we need no schools in the United States. The same reminded me the hype around the tablet-based education right now, where the promise is that by 2020 we need no textbooks, we need no written exercise books, we need no traditional tests, we need no classrooms, as we know, we don't need no lecturing schedules, we have one big buffet. I come back to another example a bit later on, but the moral of the story for me is, yes, the tablets are changing the personal technology use worldwide. The interface design of those devices is making a big difference probably in 10, 15, 20 years. But it's not going to change in a short term. Institutions which are just learning how to adapt with digital natives and where there is still a demand for a long-term strategies which go beyond the short-term technical life cycles. The well-known trivia question is, can you name the biggest university on planet Earth? Do you know what's the biggest university in terms of how many people attend at school? What's your bet? 100,000 students, 200,000 students? It would be a huge school, 200,000 students. Well, the trivia has not one single right answer usually. The battle goes between Zhengjiang, Guangbo, Jiangxi, Daoxie, which is known also as China National Television and Radio University, which has around 3 million students and around 100,000 people staff. And another candidate is Indira Gandhi National University, which currently enrolls around 800,000 postgraduate students and has around 3 million enrolled students on their basic curriculum. Those universities both were set up before the internet time. One in 1979 and another in 1985 respectively. And they pay huge attention to distant learning enabling technologies, TV and radio mostly, and they play also a huge attention in cross-language and cross-cultural content. It means, in the end of the day, a lot of research made on didactics, what is happening when you don't see a student. In 1997, another very interesting university was set up, and at that time I was absolutely thrilled to see what they are about to do. They were about to re-establish totally the lifelong learning and also a degree credits market on a worldwide basis. It was called Zdnet University. Has anybody heard about Zdnet University? Well, it was established in 1997. And it hit the market with buffet of education. The buffet table type of education. For $4.95 a month, less than $5 a month, you can eat as much, you can learn as much as you want. Online. They had no classroom, no schedule, no formalities, no prerequisites for enrolling to any course. The EDU was, they call themselves, instructor-led online learning community. Well, it was certainly amazing to look what they offered and what was their business model. The fact is that at the moment, the ZDU.com and ZDU.net domain names are for sale. the publishing industry behind the university, Ziff Davis, has filed a bankruptcy in 2008, and online learning is still in an extremely polarized world. In 1997, they promised that by year 2000 there will be one university called Ziff Davis University, and there will be one store called Amazon left on planet Earth. Because, well, in internet you don't need more. Economy of scales enables you to bring down with the prices and to deliver the goods and services for everybody. One store is enough. One university is enough. Ziff Davis was founded in 1927 in Chicago as an American publishing company, and they were focusing hobbyist magazines, electronics magazines, and technology magazines. They had a very good deal on accessing technical manuals before the users had the new software on the market. They had a deal with Microsoft, deals with Adobe, deals with many, many other software companies, technology companies, car manufacturers, electronics companies, and they were publishing manuals and technical description and technical learning books, and their business idea was very clear. If they are able to hit first on the market with online courses about the technology, which will be out there in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, announced next Las Vegas electronics fair, they will be also the winners on the education and teaching market. The idea had a logic, but it failed because the organization never really made a customer-centric innovation. Customer centricity, taking into account the cultural needs of the end user. Well, the story of Ziff Davis is just another in the history of technology, as also the Edison's history. Well, the cinematography didn't change too much schools, but it changed our cultural landscape. It's a good moment to think a bit about the life cycles of technology and life cycles of the educational services products, as we have tend to start calling nowadays education. Education still has in Bologna format 3+2, in some other formats high education 4+1, the basic and graduate education 11 to 12 years depending on the country. It still has many years to serve. I can bet my children went to school before the iPad and they finished the school by the time nobody has heard about iPads at that time. The technical life cycles are shortening and shortening, and there are certain areas still on the market, health, education, energy, to take some of the sectors which are long cycle innovators. And there is a clash in between attempts to adopt a short life cycle technologies into a long life cycle products and services field. The new phones often have a battery you can't replace at all. If you have a question about, what if my battery dies? Manufacturer says, well, it's time then to buy a new phone. We are not making phones to have a replaceable battery, but we are making soon a new phone, which is even better than the one you just bought. And that's the life in field of technology. But when we start thinking about the content, curriculum, the focus areas on the education field, we see that we can't tolerate the life cycles of technology which are just 3-4 years long. Or we need to radically rethink the way how we embrace the technologies. That's a way where we are moving towards educational objects which are cross-technology accessible and which are platform integratable, where the content and interaction is a key and the user interface and technology which is used is a secondary importance. When I asked earlier that how the difference could be achieved in different countries, some having an ICT use-related and efficiency and return on investment-related indicators achieved faster with the smaller investments, then it's also about the question how it could be achieved. And the difference is made often not at all with what technology you're using. It's not the technical innovation that matters when you use technology. It's the process innovation. It's how you do things, how things could be done differently. It's also about the human capital, the people, their brains, their motivation, their really inner burning to make a change. And also, when we look to the technology life cycles, it includes a certain degree of luck. Right timing in terms of the technology growth. I'd love to share with you a short video which was filmed in 2000 August in Tallinn when Prime Minister's office was moving to a new premises. And it was asked also by Prime Minister that what could be done differently when we move to the new premises. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. If you move, you can leave a lot of garbage behind and start from the scratch. And one idea was, well, let's leave one garbage behind. Let's leave all the papers behind. Let's stop using papers on government meetings. The cabinet meetings had every week an agenda which was this much papers. And well, Prime Minister was asking that, well, it's a good idea, but well, do you have any examples of some other governments or any organization who is using paperless decision-making system on such a level? And the honest answer was no, we don't know actually. And that's where the trick hits. Many heads of states, many heads of organizations want to have innovations which have been proven already by somebody else. Saying that, well, if nobody is doing it, then why should we do it? That's not the way how innovators approach the new solutions. Because, well, how can you be innovative if everybody else is doing it already? Well, then you are just lagging heavily behind. But if you want really to be innovative, then you have to ask the question that what is that what nobody else is doing and we could do? Bottom line, the Prime Minister said, great idea. Let's start paperless cabinet and let's do it in 3 months and oops, we don't have any money. So we went to the state secretary saying that, well, we know how much papers you are copying every year. And if we promise you no more copying of papers is needing, give us your budget, which you're using at the moment for copying the papers. And we build a paperless cabinet IT system for that money. Well, he said there is a possibility. But changing the budget lines in traditional bureaucracy is even more tougher than anything else. If there is a budget available for papers and copying, can it be used for innovation? No. Luckily, Prime Minister had an intervention with the state secretary, and the system was started. Originally, it was there were a number of issues out there. Originally, we were afraid that they don't like it. They don't like the way how the system works. The politicians don't know how to use it. It takes a lot of time to learn how to use it. But the training time was not 45 minutes per person, but it was around 10 to 12 minutes per person. They started to enjoy that. They were able to participate on the cabinet meetings from abroad also. And they also, in the end of the day, felt finally that when governments are preaching societies to be innovative, they need also to practice what they preach. People don't believe you if you say, you all need to be innovative and use IT as much as you can for the benefit of the efficiency and for the benefit of growth and prosperity. But we, government, we don't need to do anything. Then people don't believe you. It is a small top of the iceberg, but it's also a sign. It's a sign that transferred the image of the government in front of society. It was also an efficiency gain in time and resources. And most important, it was a positive learning exercise for ministers, saying that, yes, we can do something which nobody else has done before. And that is called innovation. When you have an idea which you make into reality. Innovation is not when you have an idea. Well, we have everybody plenty of ideas, daydreaming around what could be done. But what could be done and what we did actually is a huge difference, and that's where the innovation hits in, and that's where the culture for innovation hits in. For the last 20 years, I have worked quite actively in the research and adoption of information technology and communication technologies into the daily processes of both private, public organizations and education structures, universities and schools, not only in Estonia but in other areas in Europe and in other regions in developing countries. I have been participating in most ridiculous ceremonies in opening small and medium-sized enterprises website dedicated to revolutionary change. And I never understood why politicians want to have a ceremonies around things which you can't really touch. Well, website opening is the most, well, you have 3 prime ministers pushing a huge rubber camouflage of a computer mouse. And when they push the button, somebody in the background says to a video guy, "No, change a slide. And the new slide is coming out, and they don't understand anything, and nobody understands anything. And the small and medium-sized enterprises don't use it because they have no motivation whatsoever to use it. Yet, government after government often steps into failures and tries to hide those failures. There has been a very good and critical analysis done also in European Union about digital agenda achievements. And again, Teresa Sancho, in her opening speech, mentioned that the issues which were on the table in year 2002 are still on the table right now. We have not made really a remarkable progress. When we look to the Network Readiness Index prepared and analyzed by World Economic Forum on an annual basis, we see that the picture is often still the same. It's United States, Singapore, Northern European tigers, Asian tigers leading the picture. However, what has happened during the last 10 years' time is that the EU 27 average is lagging behind, while our investments per capita are not lagging behind. So it's really about process, how we do, because some countries have smaller investments, have faster results, inclusive results, and that's not the case when we work in European Union context. Pity. The present analysis from the different other players admits that the issues around our general approach to the freedoms in Europe and the question whether the 4 basic freedoms in Europe, the free movement of people, goods, services and capital, is really enabled in the 21st century context. When I move somewhere, is it really so that my licenses, my certificates, the information about my health is also actually moving, is also accessible here by the civil servants, by the doctors, by the authorities? No, it's not. We are fragmented into 27 different markets, and we remain there for a time being. We also have an idea about fifth movement, or fifth freedom. It's a free movement of information and knowledge in Europe. And there are 2 roads to achieve that. One is a traditional approach where you build up more infrastructure. That causes more online subscribers, more people online. More people online means more use of ICT and ICT services, and that's bringing the economic impact, social impact. And another is you look to the existing barriers. You focus on harmonization and taking down the barriers on the European Union regulatory environment. This is really easy. You dig down a hole, you make a canal, you put the fiber optics there, you make a new base station, and that's something what companies know, and it's easy to make a next 5 base stations when you know the market and when you have the financial incentives. I'd love to come to the conclusion on my keynote with looking again to the challenges we are facing. And one of the challenges is related very much, in my mind, on the innovation culture in different organizations, including also universities and public administration. We have been overutilizing the phrase learning from success. You probably have heard about what is a success story, or what is a best practice we can learn from. And my honest answer, also experiencing the innovation management in different organizations, failing in many cases with innovation, is that you can't learn anything from success. Success makes you blind. Success makes you believe that you are invincible and you really can succeed also next time because you have a secret formula for successful innovation. There is no secret formula except fail more, fail faster, and failure is the only way how to learn something. This is a concept, this is a fundamental concept also of education. You rehearse and fail until you become master of something. I recall my children learning how to drive a bicycle. And driving a bicycle, well, everybody knows it. Everybody is on the street driving bicycle. And when we think about the way how we motivate our children when they get a new bike for a birthday, and then we say, well, let's go now out with a bicycle. Then we never act with our children in the way how governments and government agencies act when you talk about innovation in organizations. When you get the funding, first of all, you can't fail. You can't never fail. Failure is intolerable. Secondly, they have all kinds of support mechanisms on innovation management and coaching, etc. Well, I'm thinking if I would take my daughter, well, it took 1.5 years for her to learn bicycling. Well, it's not a daily exercise, but she didn't want to bicycle, and then she wanted, and then she didn't want, and then she wanted, and then she didn't learn, and then suddenly in one day, blah, she started to bicycle. And if I would act as an investor or as a government agency, saying that, well, here's your new bicycle, start riding, and if you fail, I punish you. Because you can't fail, because it's our policy. Or I would also do the same as innovation agencies in many countries do. I would publish also a booklet, how to ride a bicycle, and give it to my daughter. Here's your new bicycle, and here's a booklet. Or I could also address the best practices and bring a champion of bicycling and show, here is a champion of bicycling. See how the champion is driving around. Now do the same. It's a different technique you use for coaching innovation and motivating people to innovate. It's tolerating small failures. It's about really talking in the organization and learning from your failures and learning from the opportunities. There are no shortcuts when we want to establish an innovation culture in our organization. In conclusion, we are living and continue living in a world where the information and communication technology life cycles are shortening and shortening. The apps made for mobile phones have often the life cycle of 1 week to 1 month, which is a time to make a return on investment for the inventor, the publisher of the application. They are event-based solutions, technical solutions, and then after that they don't exist any longer. We have also in societies increasing expectation on what technology could do. And unfortunately, we have often the expectations where there is a demand that technology should solve the problems without us changing anything in our behavior, in our organizational structure. We should have a coalition to work against those decision makers, bosses who want IT to have miraculous solutions without them changing anything in organizations. In education field, we see and continue seeing decreasing budgets available per students. We see that education structures all around Europe are in heavy pressure, despite the proportionally relatively high spending on GDP to higher education, and despite the fact that the number of students enrolling to our universities is decreasing, we also see the budgets available per student are smaller, and we see the decreasing time available per student. Universities are becoming factories in terms of their daily processes and routines. However, in the positive side, we see great opportunities which are increasing to explore new partnerships. The same EUNoM is a great example of partnerships, cross-cultural, cross-border partnerships. And we see an increasing demand in all organizations for cross-culture, cross-national, cross-lingual collaboration where people actually also understand each other, not in the sense of language, but in the sense of meaning. There is a famous Estonian pop ballad from 1980s called Tunnete keel, Language of Feelings. The poetry was written by Rudolf Rimmel, a dissident during the Soviet Union times. Lots of hidden meanings. During Soviet Union, we learned to hide the meaning between the lines. And we learned the craft of reading behind the lines, between the lines, and on the other side of the paper. In that ballad, there is a question. Millal see oli, millal, mis keeles me teineteist viimati kuulsime? Translated to English, when was it? And in which language we recently really listened each other? And the story was about a relationship where you tried 1,000 different languages in terms of the feelings, the cruelty, the tenderness, the all imaginable feelings, and when they don't work, you really want to ask, what language was it where we understood each other, when we really understood each other? And that's, if you may, my last quote of the presentation today. And once again, I'm really thankful for the organizers of the event taking us here together, giving me an opportunity to speak in front of you and probably encourage you in taking bolder steps in order to fail small in order to succeed big, to increase the innovation culture in your organizations. And all the best for you for the remaining of the symposium. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll all agree that was a very stimulating presentation, and so certainly it raised a lot of issues in my mind. the challenges that we face, you know, it's fairly obvious that the new technology is changing the nature of employment structures. The obvious example is from media to multimedia. But at the same time, it's changing the need for institutional structures. You really don't need libraries that are separate from people who are going to be developing the technology to exploit the digital media that you're holding in libraries in order to create new media that you can exploit and market. But you try and get these institutions to relinquish themselves, and they'll say, but my career is online. I'm the head of this institution. You know, there are so many embedded systems. We have the technology now. We don't need political representatives. Political representatives were there in the 19th century because there was no way of everyone communicating together. We don't need them any longer. But can you see the political parties giving up their power? It won't happen. And I think that it's this kind of thing that is holding things back in many respects. If we're going to exploit things like the digital cultural resources, let's say, you need online working environments, but you need those working environments to operate across languages so that you're sharing meaning. Now, sharing meaning is a social construction. And how do you do that? Technologists aren't developing it. There's a place there for you, for the linguists, for the language side of things. You know, the technology is changing the time-space relationships that we have. That brings in deictics. What can you do with linguistics that will change linguistics and our understanding of linguistics as it relates to the potential for marketing, working, and developing new products and so on within the environments? I mean, these are the kinds of ways that we should be thinking differently. Stop thinking about linguistics, stop thinking about language, start thinking of integrating all of these things into something entirely new. You know, it seems so obvious when you reflect on it, but it takes someone like this to make us reflect, and that's the value of us operating across disciplines and across our narrow ways of thinking and understanding. You know? That's what it's done for me. I'm sure it's done a great deal for you. Does anyone have any questions, observations, or anything?
I really liked the presentation. I missed only one thing, the human being, something similar Glyn talked about. So you talked about paperless government. I really prefer a government, a thoughtful government, a responsible, and it doesn't depend on the efficiency on technology. So that's my view. Yeah, I understood what you were talking about. That's absolutely great. Reduce paperwork, etc. But I still think that you can have interactive boards in a classroom if you don't have thoughts in your mind. Okay, thanks. Is it on?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think technology, you have to find the right proportion between human beings and technology. And what I think, as for Hungary, we have everywhere computers, everything. But I think you have to change the thinking of the people, and probably the two and the right proportion will help to make the world more efficient, or governments working more efficiently, etc. So that is just a remark. It's not a real question, but thank you anyway.
Well, a very short feedback also. The example I made, the Prime Minister did not have any allergy or hate on paper. And the trick was actually that by making government working in electronic environment, well, all the papers are, well, there are no papers made in public administration nowadays. There are no typewriters, nobody's handwriting. All the documents are prepared anyway electronically. So it was just, and all the archives are already electronic archives. So it was just a total meaningless waste of resources. However, there was also an extra value. bridging the gap between the government and society, because when government works and makes the decisions with IT, the decision of the government is available for public information roughly 5 to 7 seconds after the decision is made. And the cabinet agenda is visible for people 1 week before. So it is already making a fundamental shift in the way how government is interacting with society. And those are the things which are embedded into the opportunities of society when using ICT. And well, it's, as I said, in many cases and many times, we have a very high hopes on ICT without really thinking that we should change ourselves anything in our processes, structures, and our workflows. We need also to change the workflows in order to make really the IT investment impactful. Thank you.
Anyone else? Let's take the one in the back first.
May I start by congratulating you on a really stimulating and thought-provoking opening address. Thank you very much. My question is, should we be paying as much or even possibly more attention to how we use ICT as much as to the development of more advanced forms of ICT? I believe that we haven't really thought through the impact on society of ICT. I think we saw examples of revolutions in Egypt and Libya within the last year or two. I bet that, and it is said that they couldn't have happened without ICT. Anti-government groups were able to communicate with each other, arrange demonstrations and so forth. I bet that Mubarak and Gaddafi never foresaw that use of ICT. I recently translated a brochure for Samsung about a new piece of IT equipment, multimedia equipment. And one of the selling points was you can have a television screen in every room in your house with a different program. And I had to ask myself, who in the name of God would want a different television station blaring in every room in the house? I've also been told by a teacher that how she's noticed many of her students don't eat family meals. They retire to their bedroom with their laptop and look at television or Twitter each other or whatever people in their teens do. What I'm saying is that the impact can be positive and it can also be negative. And it is happening, and I think very quickly, and I don't think we have really given nearly enough thought to the impact of ICT on society. And I think that this, maybe in some respects, is more important than the actual technological developments. Because I believe if we can show that it is positive and how it can be used positively, it will be much more easy then to obtain additional public funding for the development of ICT. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your observations also. And there was one question about kind of my personal emphasis, whether to focus on kind of adoption of existing technologies versus developing new technologies. And my recommendation on many organizations has been that technology development takes place nowadays only in cross-sectorial and cross-corporation consortiums. If you have an ability, capacity, and internal structure to work in kind of such a multidimensional projects, go ahead. Google and Ericsson have finished joint development in consortium of of the technology called WebRTC, HTML5-based secure shared communication environment, which I think honestly will change also a lot in learning and e-learning environments. They did not develop it for education purposes. They developed it for the general communication, as a general communication and shared competence and knowledge platform. And I see huge opportunities of that in education field. This is more and more challenging to sniff and to find the new emerging technical opportunities which could be adopted. My focus and recommendation for all the universities is to focus on technology adoption, which is what you know your students, you know your organization, you know your capacity, you know what motivates your people, you know the learning curve of your organization, and use the existing technologies and focus on technology adoption, and in only rare cases make the joint technical or technological development projects very selected ones. Otherwise, adopting existing technologies, there is more to be done with really technology adoption.